Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. I am John Quincy, the chair, and I'm joined by Council Members Yang, Palmisano, Bender, and Council Vice President Glidden. And Council Member Andrew Johnson is with us today, and he'll be here shortly. He's attending to some personal matter in his office. So if I could begin, we'll begin with a very lengthy agenda, which is not uncommon for the end of the year. Lots of consent items, which I'm going to go through first, and then we'll be able to go into the public hearing on the franchise agreements, and we'll be followed up by several discussion items. So in terms of the consent agenda, I'd like to offer, there's two additional legal settlements that were added to the agenda that are before you on the dais. I'd like to add those to the consent agenda in addition to the legal settlement item number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Item number 7 on the printed agenda is contract amendments with NAC Mechanical and Electrical Services. We also have a contract amendment with Ice Builders for change orders at the Target Center. Item number 9 is a purchase of a high-speed small format scanner for the Document Solutions Center. Item 10 is the appropriation approval for loan application request for Minnesota Public Facilities Authority. That's for the Fridley Filter Water Plant Rehabilitation Project. We also have item number 11, the annual property insurance premium for Convention Center, Talmadge Building, and Parking Deck. Item number 12 is a contract amendment with Springstead, Inc. to perform federal rebate calculations for bond issuances. Item number 13 is a series of master contracts with 10 different firms for short-term investment providers. None of those providers are guaranteed any of those. This is just a master contract list of additional providers that we'll be able to work with on short-term investments going forward. Item number 14 is the city investment policy review and updates. This is primarily the same content of our existing financial policies, just rearranged and clarification and some title changes within the document itself. There's also item number 15 is a contract amendment for the investment management agreement. Item number 16 is the 2017 third quarter city financial report. Item 17 is a contract with Arete Consulting for solid waste information management system services. We also have a gift acceptance for travel for SharePoint Fest in December of this year. Item number 19 is a contract with Twitter for data procurement. Also, item 20 is a grant from United States Department of Justice, Community-Oriented Policing Services. This is the COPS grant for 10 sworn officers. Item number 21 is a contract amendments with Hennepin County Department of Community Corrections for probation officer services. Item 22 is appointment of the Ward 6 member to the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. Item 23 is a grant acceptance from Minnesota Department of Health for lead awareness and healthy homes campaign. Item 12 is the application to the Minnesota Department of Health for home visiting grant. Item 25 is an amendment to the City of Minneapolis MinFlex plan. 26 is ADC commercial real estate loan restructuring. I also have an impact fund grant from Minnesota Housing for neighborhood stabilization, item 27. Item 28 is the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Office of Justice Programs grant for youth intervention program. 29 is the potential programming for utility franchise increase revenue. That's item number 29. Item number 30 is the grant from Minnesota Homeland Security and Emergency Management for police bombs disposal unit services. Contract amendment with Translanguages for translation interpreting services. I could use some help on that. Contract amendment with Foresight Consulting Services for tabletop exercises and after action reporting. Item 33 is the Broadway Street Northeast reconstruction project. 34 is a contract with In Control for control system programming for the Fridley filtration plant. Contract amendment with Chemstone Products for ready mix concrete. And 36 is the contract amendment with Schaefer Contracting for the 54th Street West reconstruction project. Also have a contract amendment with Safety Signs for rental and traffic control devices. Contract amendment with Tyzak Concrete for 35th and 36th Street pedestrian ramps and signal upgrades. 39 is the contract amendment with Tyzac Concrete for the 24th Street and the school location pedestrian ramp. Contract amendment with Formation Studios for additional services associated with public art on Nicollet Mall. And 41 is the 10th Street Southeast Mississippi River Bridge Engineering Consulting Services Agreement. We also have Penn Avenue North Reconstruction Project and the C-Line Bus Rapid Transit Improvements. That's a cooperative agreement with Hennepin County. We also have an agreement with Hennepin County for traffic signal improvements. Item 44 is the 18th Avenue Northeast Trail Gap. That's project layout and easements. Item 45 is the capital project closeouts and appropriation and revenue adjustments within the city's capital project and enterprise funds. 46 is the bid for revised signal systems and pedestrian curb ramp improvements. And the final item on the consent agenda is the joint powers agreement with the state of Minnesota for electrical workers and related costs. That's item number 47. Are there any questions from council members on any of those items outlined, as well as the two additional walk-on items from the city attorney's office? Not seeing any. All those in favor of those items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those items all carry. Thank you very much for all the work, especially with all the contract closeouts for the end of the year. So that turns us to the first of our public hearings. We're going to have two public hearings and taking action on the proposed franchise fee agreements with the first one is the gas franchise fee, and then the second one is the electrical franchise fee ordinance. What we'll do is we'll have a brief staff presentation followed up by the public hearing portion of it, and then we'll be taking up those two items. I think we can take them up simultaneously for action, but we'll have two different public hearings on the items. So with that, if we could begin with the staff presentation with an introduction, and feel free whenever you're ready. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
Chair Quincy, council members, thank you for having us here today. My name is Luke Hollenkamp. I'm with the City Coordinator's Office of Sustainability, and I'll be joined in this presentation by Patrick Hanlon, Director of Environmental Programs at the Health Department, and Matt Kazinka, Co-Chair of the Energy Vision Advisory Committee. We'd like to present to you an overview of some of the potential programming that a franchise fee increase could help fund, either expand or accelerate. We'll give you a very quick update on where we are in achieving some of our city's energy and climate goals. Talk a little bit about the Clean Energy Partnership process that has examined the resources that the city has, and give some examples again of some programming that additional resources could be used for. When we look at our citywide greenhouse gas emissions, we see that the city has actually reduced emissions from 2006 to 17.8% below those levels. That was in 2015. So we've actually made our 2015 target for a reduction of 15%. And we are next focusing our efforts on a reduction target of 30% by 2025 and ultimately 80% by 2050. However, we are currently not on track with the progress we're making and the pace that we are under to hit our 80% reduction target by 2050. And the majority of our reductions that we've had to date have been the result of a cleaner, less carbon intensive electricity grid from Xcel Energy. We also have specific energy goals at the city. One of those in particular is achieving retrofits of 75% of households by 2025. In 2016, in data we received through the Clean Energy Partnership, we reached about 837 households. That is well below the rate that we would need to have home energy squad visits in the city to reach our 2025 goal. So acceleration would also be needed to meet those targets. To examine how we can accelerate and use some existing resources and identify new resources, the Clean Energy Partnership was established in early 2015 to increase energy efficiency and renewable energy of the city through a utility and city partnership. The partnership is made up of a board, which has members of City Council, Mayor's Office, City Coordinator, as well as vice presidents of the utilities. There's also a number of staff members that work on the Clean Energy Partnership. We devote weekly meetings to making progress and looking for ways to coordinate together. And we also are very fortunate to have the Energy Vision Advisory Committee. This is a group of 15 members who meet to provide guidance and advice to the Clean Energy Partnership Board, and they really bring an important community voice. And led by the Energy Advisory Committee, it was a study recently undertaken to examine the resources and programming needs to meet some of those very ambitious city goals that we had. I'd like to now introduce Matt Kazinka up here, who's one of the two co-chairs of the Energy Vision Advisory Committee. Could talk a little bit more about the process they went through.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Chair Quincy, council members, thank you for having me here. As Luke said, my name is Matt Kazinka. I work for the Lake Street Council, working with businesses on energy efficiency and other sustainability initiatives. I'm also co-chair of the Energy Vision Advisory Committee, or EVAC. You can see the list of members that we have include people from primarily residents of Minneapolis who work in a variety of organizations, environmental, community organizations, educational institutions, business organizations, and bring a lot of different experience. So we see the primary role of the Clean Energy Partnership must be to advance the city's progress towards the Climate Action Plan. That is the main reason why we would have an entity like this. And EVAC has been working since we started to figure out ways that we can help advance that acceleration and how we can help move the city forward. We have, for a while, been talking about several of the barriers that might keep us from accelerating energy efficiency implementation among residents and businesses in the city. One of those main barriers is limited awareness of the utility programs and resources that are available to these customers. Many people do not know that there are resources that can help them save energy, or how they would access them, which program is best for them. Also, significant financial barriers that many people face. They're not being able to afford the upfront cost, not being able to qualify for financing, or not being able to make agreements with their landlords if they are a renter on how to split costs and make it a win-win situation for both parties. And finally, we work very closely with Excel and Centerpoint and the city, and we know that we have a lot of really good ideas in the Climate Action Plan and in the Clean Energy Partnership Work Plan, but we aren't able to move those forward without more capacity on those institutions, especially at the city, as well as better incentives and better tools in our toolbox to advance energy efficiency. So expanding the funding we see as one of the key barriers. If we can expand the funding, we think we can address all of these barriers. The funding work group with EVAC launched at the beginning of this year to try to address that question. How do we expand funding for clean energy and energy efficiency activities in the city? As Luke mentioned, we had a study. We had 6 members that worked on this over several months, supported by staff from the city, from Excel, and from Centerpoint, to create a set of recommendations. We identified that we needed ongoing funding, that we wouldn't be able to make the type of progress we need with a one shot here or there, and that funding needed to be able to be at the scale that is needed and be reliable year to year. So many of the options that we might otherwise have pursued, such as grants, simply aren't possible aren't reliable enough to help us get to where we need to go. And then increase in the franchise fee we identified as probably one of the best mechanisms because it relates to energy use, it is sustainable, and it is scalable. So the ordinance, as you are aware, is EVAC had proposed, and the ordinance follows this proposal, that the city increase its utility franchise fees by 0.5% in each customer class. So residents raising their rates from 4.5% to 5%, businesses from 5 to 5.5, and industrial from 3 to 3.5. You can see on your slides the average increase in monthly fees, which would be relatively minimal for residents, about half a dollar on a monthly residential bill, and larger for businesses, especially businesses that use significant amounts of energy for heating or production in their business. We think these costs are justified because we think there's many good uses to put this money towards. So on the residential side, we see a lot of opportunities to expand the outreach to single-family buildings and multifamily buildings. I think especially for renters and multifamily building owners, there's a lot of policy tools and incentives and mechanisms we need to put in place to ensure that we can address the unique challenges that those buildings have. We want to see an expansion of financing tools for both residents and businesses, and we see this as a great workforce development opportunity. We are going to be creating jobs by expanding this type of work, and we want to make sure that those jobs are accessible and work towards the city's equity goals. On the business side, the commercial side, we would like to see an expansion of our business incentive programs. Patrick will talk about those, and to create an engagement program that reaches businesses where they're at across the city. And we'll be going through some more specific examples of some of those programs as we go. I'm going to hand it back to Luke. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Quincy, council members, due to the great work that EVAC had done and some of the recommendations, then we brought this information forward to the Clean Energy Partnership Board, who passed this resolution in July of this year. In particular, the resolution says that the board supports additional dedicated city funding for new and existing programs to increase energy efficiency and renewable energy investments with a specific focus on equity and greenhouse gas emissions reductions. The mayor's office has also, in her proposed budget, included an increase in the franchise fee. And with the help of the budget director in the mayor's office, put together a slide that outlines some numbers within that budget. In 2018, the franchise fee increase, if it were to pass an ordinance, would bring an additional $2.2 million estimated. In 2019, that would be estimated to be larger, potentially $2.8 million, since that would be a full year's collection. Of those $2.2 million, there also has been budgeting for $74,000 for multi-family benchmarking assistance and policy development in the health department, $190,000 for sustainability office programming, and now that would be ongoing funding, $272,000 for the Green Business Cost Share program, again, that would be ongoing funding now, and $300,000 for sustainability office current staffing levels. And again, that would be ongoing. When you take the remainder of that, and then you also subtract out a estimated cost for potentially new and now existing renewable connect contracts, there's approximately $1 million in the budget, again, the mayor's proposed budget, that would be allocated to climate and energy work that could be informed by the Clean Energy Partnership recommendations in 2018. And also make a note that Council Vice President Glidden asked a question about process for including the Clean Energy Partnership and other interested community members in helping to determine and make recommendations for that potential $1 million. And as staff, we've developed some recommendations, and I'll be circulating those later on today for review. With additional funding and additional resources, we see that we can accelerate towards our goals with policy development, with greater and increased engagement, with incentives and incentive programs, and also financing programs. We're going to take the next few slides just to highlight a few of those potential programs. This is not an exhaustive list. There's actually many different activities that we could undertake or increase our pace. But this is meant to be an example of some of those potential activities. First, we can offer some financing buy-down programs. For instance, the city before has piloted a program to buy down interest rates to 0%, leveraging home energy squad visits. And this is a program that we successfully piloted with Center for Energy and Environment. We also see that there's an opportunity to buy down the cost of home energy squad visits and for businesses, turnkey assessments. And again, this could help, this could build on some successful piloting that we have done in previous years. And to talk a little bit more now about benchmarking and green business cost share programs, I'll invite Patrick Hanlon to discuss those.
Mr. Hanlon, welcome.
Chair Quincy, council members, my name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Director of Environmental Programs for the Health Department. I just wanted to briefly discuss a few programs that could be implemented with the recommendations in conjunction with the recommendations from EVAC on the franchise fee. One is our expanding our commercial energy benchmarking program. It's a program that benchmarks energy use in commercial buildings over 50,000 square feet. This represents 15% of our citywide greenhouse gas emissions. From 417 properties. And so there's a lot of opportunities in building on the success of the program. working with conducting technical assistance, engagement opportunities, outreach to bring together some of the resources that are out there with the utilities and then with our own City of Minneapolis incentive programs. Looking at the next program would be the multifamily residential, is expanding that commercial program into residential multifamily properties. That program would represent between 45% and 65% of our rental building area in Minneapolis. So between the two programs, we could really be focusing on driving energy efficiency projects in some very large sectors of buildings by doing outreach, technical assistance, and bringing incentives, bringing all the pieces of the puzzle together for building owners and managers. Another program that was mentioned by Matt is the incentive programs, and one example of that is the Green Business Cost Share Program. If you look on the left, that's the amount of programs that's been, or money that's been leveraged from 2012 to 2017. And another way of looking at that is the impact that can be made by leveraging dollars. With a small amounts of city funding or amounts of city funding, we can leverage large amounts of public-private investment. And it would be leveraging investment from nonprofits, government partners, utility funding, and it should be noted that there's a lot of utility program capacity, unused capacity from Centerpoint and Excel that's out there that could be leveraged in the city to drive climate change work. And then if you look on the right side, that's a map of the potential opportunities that are out there with the commercial program. And it's fair to say there's a lifetime of opportunity in driving climate change work at those around Minneapolis. The other area is expanding that same concept into housing, into the Green Housing Cost Share Program, is adapting that proven approach with the Green Business Program and trying to address the split incentive between tenants and owners. Owners often pass on utility costs to tenants. Tenants don't have the resources or the ability to make changes within residential units, and so addressing affordability and healthy housing by providing incentives to building owners, to residential owners, where we could address healthy housing, affordability, and be driving down energy efficiency, be addressing climate change at the same time. Sorry, we've got a short agenda, so I'm trying to fly through these here. And that program would leverage projects that we estimate at around 5 to 1. So a $200,000 investment would leverage $1 million in investments in these properties. And it should be noted too that we have programs through the HUD program, through our healthy housing program. There's weatherization money that's left unused in those projects. There's $1,500 in incentives for each one of the properties that we go in for weatherization. And to do a $5,000, $6,000 weatherization project, a lot of times that money, it's not enough of an incentive. So a lot of times that money is left on the table. So there's money that's left on the table from the utilities and federal dollars as well. And this is the green housing cost share. The approach would start small. It would start in high priority areas like the green zones, and working with our healthy housing unit and working in properties that are mostly low income housing, and then spreading out to the rest of the city. And again, if you look to the right, the opportunities in rental properties alone in Minneapolis is enormous. Community engagement. So another recommendation from the EVAC group was to expand community engagement pilots that have shown a lot of success. And so expanding those pilots for both businesses and working with homeowners, renters, landlords, and small businesses, and utilizing energy conservation. We can have energy efficiency programs and financing programs, but if we can't get the word out to people and help people understand how all those programs come together, they're going to remain unused. And so the outreach and the engagement is a huge portion of the EVAC recommendations, and what the city staff support as well. So, as Luke mentioned, to reach our climate goals, we really need to accelerate our policy, our engagement, our incentives, and financing to bend the curve to get closer to our goals. It's 55 degrees today in Minneapolis on December 4th, and we haven't had any snow on the ground. And the oddest part of that is that it's no longer odd, is that we don't find that odd anymore. I recently had Gretchen Musicant, the commissioner of the health department, was asked why we would be spending money on programs, on some of these extra programs, like energy efficiency, when we have base needs in the city and inspections and other work going on. And her response to that was, I really loved her response to that, was that this may be, according to the world scientists, this may be the most important issue that we have. And I don't need to tell anyone that there's not a lot of work going on at the federal government, and where that work happens is right here with us. And so that's a big reason why the sustainability department and a lot of staff, we support this work and the recommendations from EVAC. And also it should be mentioned that according to the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy, we dropped 4 places in our rating, our scorecard rating for the city of Minneapolis, from 8 to 11. And so in order to accelerate this work, this franchise fee is necessary to drive solutions in a way that saves businesses money, saves residents money, and can help us realistically hit our goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanlon. Are there any other staff presentation part of this? Thank you. That concludes that. Are there any questions, comments from council members for staff before I open the public hearing? Okay. Also been joined by Councilmember Gordon. I know this is kind of a side interest of yours over the last couple of years. I'm surprised to see you here. Really, I am. Okay, with that, let's open up the first of the public hearings. Now, this is the one related to the gas franchise fee. I've got 10 folks who are signed up on this sheet. Would love to have you come up. Would like you keep your comments brief. Would like to keep it under 2 minutes. We don't have a timer specifically, an automated electronic one, but we have Ken and Kelly though, so they'll be able to share those signs with you. The first on my list is Betty Kissel. Of course, there is. I'm also going to call the next couple. If we could line up, that would help cue this up. That'll be Dave Oker and then Paula Thompson. Welcome. Whenever you're ready,
Okay.
the clock begins.
Good afternoon. My name's Betty Kissel, 4155 Garfield. Thank you for this time to speak and for your commitment to climate action and equity. As you know, and as the previous speaker just alluded, it's never been more important that local units of government act responsibly, and I'm grateful to live in a city that has a clean energy partnership. I support the franchise fee increase on both gas and electric. I'll be the first to admit that I do not do as much as I could to reduce my carbon footprint. I'll keep trying to do better on my own. But the franchise fee, like taxation, is a kind of a group effort that could help renters, businesses, and homeowners save on energy costs while helping slow climate change. Thanks to economic privilege, my family was able to install a 16-panel solar electric system on our house and garage a few years ago. It generates about half the electricity we use. It allows us to monitor our electric use closely. We've saved money and used less electricity as a result. Our project required an energy assessment of our home, which revealed the need for more insulation. And after insulating, we use less natural gas as well, saving more money and reducing emissions. With revenue from a franchise fee increase, more people and businesses could participate in energy assessments and ongoing energy use monitoring and make changes that save money and help the environment. It's hard to be optimistic right now, but no matter how we feel about the future, I think we have a duty to do more today to make a future possible for our species. I wish this was hyperbole. The franchise fee increase is one step in the right direction, and I ask you to support it. I ask you to direct the additional revenue, as the EVAC has recommended, to give Minneapolis a smaller carbon footprint and give more people a way to help make that happen. It's a group effort, but it starts with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Go ahead, Ms. Thompson instead of Mr. Oker. I just want to keep in order. It doesn't matter. Just want to make sure. The next person, if we could get to join us, would be Grace Corbin. Mr. Oker.
Hi, thanks for listening to us today. I'm here to support the increase in the franchise fees and also to and dedicate that money to inclusive financing programs. And I know, they went through a lot of the benefits and the programs that would be supported by that. And to me, the main point is to lower the economic barriers to energy efficiency and transitioning to renewable resources. People like me, we can afford to do it, but there's a lot of people around the city who cannot, especially renters, and this opens the door for renters to also join in and help promote energy efficiency and transition and take action on climate change. And I kind of see this in one way, and that is there was a lot of rhetoric and discussion in the last election about affordable housing this, affordable housing this, that. But in this way, you can actually take a step toward realizing that, lowering the cost for people to live in the city of Minneapolis, keep our diversity, and keep people living in the city at a reasonable rate. I know that they also went through in the staff presentations that you are not on track to meet the promises for increasing energy efficiency in buildings and lowering our carbon footprint. This is a way of jumpstarting all of that by giving everyone access to the money to improve our city. There's a lot of ignorance, denial, and probably political expediency at the state and federal level about climate action, and a city that claims progressivism in any way needs to take this kind of action. So thank you, and remember, we're watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, followed by Grace Corbin.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Paula Thompson, and I'm a Minnesota mom of two and a Lutheran Minnesotan, and I volunteer with the Eco Faith Network at the Church Center in Minneapolis. I was raised here in Minnesota to respect and appreciate God's creation, and it saddens me to see the ways that dirty energy destroys our water and air quality and has a damaging effect on our health and unfairly hurts poor communities. I feel strongly moved to work toward making affordable clean energy available to all Minnesotans. As I've learned more about this issue and the future that my family and friends are going to experience, it was easy to get very discouraged. Happily this spring, I went to a clean energy talk at my church, and what an appropriate place it was to hear this good news. We have not only a growing clean energy economy, but a great opportunity for all Minnesotans to save energy through energy efficiency. My husband and I bought an all-electric car this spring, and I felt proud and I felt hopeful as I looked over all the new electric cars on that lot that Minnesotans were investing in. Driving this car has made me so much more aware of the energy I use and how many kilowatt hours of that energy it takes to get to where I need to go. As a Christian who respects and appreciates the amazing world we've been given by God, I want to know when I plug in my all-electric car in Minneapolis that the energy going into it is clean energy. I hope you will support funding climate solutions that get us closer to 100% renewable energy and energy efficiency by supporting the utility franchise fee increase.
Thank you very much. Ms. Corbin, before you begin, we also have Jason Rodney after this, and then Jean Ross. Ms. Corbin.
Hello, thank you for having me today. My name is Grace Corbin. I live in the Phillips neighborhood and work in the Stevens Square neighborhood. I am here urging you to make a small increase in the franchise fee for clean and efficient energy. I'm a recent college graduate and current and future resident of Minneapolis. As a young adult and person of faith, I am concerned about the future of our city and the world. The steps that need to be taken to slow down climate change are not being implemented. We need to continue moving forward on clean and efficient energy by partnering with energy companies to create a more sustainable world. One way that this partnership can grow and sustainability can thrive in Minneapolis is the increase in this franchise fee. This increase can provide Minneapolis with $2.9 million dedicated to energy efficiency and accessibility to renewables. This increase can help Minneapolis lead on clean energy and move toward 100% renewable energy. With this money, many different programs will be implemented. Part of the work that will be implemented with the franchise fee is programs that increase equity in accessing renewables and energy efficiency. It is through my core convictions as a person of faith that I believe in the just and equitable distribution of resources. The franchise fee increase will help everyone have access to clean energy. Additionally, increasing the franchise fee can help Minneapolis further achieve equity through education and job creation. Minnesota has some of the highest employment education gaps in the U.S. for racial minorities, and it's important that we address this issue in light of the new and growing green economy. It's time that we as a city move forward on clean energy and designate more money to clean energy and efficiency. We know we need to move forward on this, and increasing the franchise fee is a logical step. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jason Rodney, Gene Ross, Jack Chandler. Mr. Rodney.
Thanks. Good afternoon, council members and everyone else in this room. Thanks for taking the time to be here. I'm curious for folks in the committee, how many of you have rented in Minneapolis? Cool, right on. And even for those of you who have just owned, I bet you know there's a mix of like amazing landlords and some that are don't always meet the needs of the renters. I've been a renter with at least 10 different properties. And in all of those, even with the great landlords, it's not their top priority to help me figure out how to be cutting down my energy bill. I am highly motivated, both for my finances and because climate change is deeply troubling for me. But it's a struggle to move into a place where there isn't roof insulation, where there's enough leaks in the house that it's like having a window open all winter. It's a struggle to clean that up, given our current setup of incentive programs and what Excel and Centerpoint are offering. And I know that it's not for a lack of motivation within our community and this council to get those needs met. But we have some amazing creative solutions that the EVAC has offered and that community members here are coming to present. So I have a good feeling that the franchise fee is going to be approved. And I'm here to urge you to be powerful and strong in holding that money is used to go towards equity, to prioritize renters, and to move us towards solutions that really connect with the residents who aren't already reaping those incentives and the benefits. I worked for an organization that contracted with Excel to do outreach to teach people about energy efficiency programs. I would go to baseball games and PV Park and meet with folks. And the fact is that with my white face and my English language, it's not meeting a ton of the folks that are my neighbors. And so I invite this council to ensure that this is an open process when the money is approved, and that the community is deeply engaged, and that we use multilingual and relationship-based practices to connect with renters across the city. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, Mr. Chandler, and followed by Barb Draper. Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Chair Quincy and council members. Yes, I think that the 0.5% increase in the franchise fee is very much needed, and even a larger one is also needed. I know you're not considering doing anything more than that at this time, but that will not be adequate to achieve the city's carbon reduction and equity goals. For this reason, none of the money for this small increase should ever be diverted to the general fund, nor should it ever be used for sustainability programs currently funded by the general fund. There has to be some provision to make sure this isn't an open check to spend it on other things. These new monies must be spent on energy equity projects and energy cost saving projects. The purpose of the franchise fee should be to increase the returned money to the consumers through energy savings and be less than the increase of the fees taken in. Our current system, where everybody pays in, but only some get to take advantage of it. It must be rectified so that renters, small businesses, people with low income, people with poor credit, and residences and businesses whose primary language is not English can also participate. And we must stop leaving out underserved members of our community, or we will most likely never reach our carbon reduction and sustainability goals.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you. I'd like to present something on the slide here. Well, I'll start off. Yeah, my name is Jack Chandler. I'm a former member of the Justice and Witness Committee of the United Church of Christ, Minnesota. And I do have an electrical engineering degree from the University of Minnesota. I ran the Boston Scientific Green Team for a number of years. And we had speakers of Will Steger and J. Drake Hamilton of Fresh Energy. I just want to share with you the urgency of taking action on climate change, which I am very glad that you're doing. And our family does purchase wind energy through XL Wind Source. I know the franchise fee will help reduce carbon pollution. And the reason I wanted to have this slide on the graph here is you can see the top graph is the average world temperature, and the bottom graph is the level of CO2. You can certainly tell that the level of CO2 is indeed increasing, and it's somewhat alarming, the most recent temperature changes. So anything you can do to combat climate change is great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandler. Ms. Draper, followed by Patti OKeefe.
Hello, my name is Barb Draper. I live in Northeast Minneapolis, and I'm here to speak in favor of the 0.5% franchise fee increase. Minneapolis has good reason to be proud of itself, and so do all of you. You have your hearts in the right place. You've adopted great goals. When I look at the Climate Action Plan, 47 pages of it, there's all kinds of great ideas. The trouble is they're not getting implemented. So we all know there's a long ways between saying we're going to lose 20 pounds and actually losing it. And in this case, it's not 20 pounds, it's not even 50 or 100, it's 500. Nobody's done this before. That means ideas that come up have to be implemented. There's no time for bureaucratic discussions and wallowing around in the slow-mo bureaucratic way. Things have to be done. This is a no-brainer. Pass the 0.5% franchise fee. There's other things that are lying around that just need to be done. Things like on-bill financing of energy efficiency improvements, sustainable building policy. Other cities have this. We shouldn't get stuck in the idea that only Minneapolis can invent this policy. They're out there. St. Paul has a perfectly good one. Get them implemented. Get going on these things. This should be on the agenda of every single city council meeting. No, I lost my train of thought. But the idea is pass this fee and then get other ones going. This is just way too slow. So we're covered with plans and good ideas. We need to get an idea of urgency and bring it to the top of the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. O'Keefe, before you begin, I just wanted to note Ruth Lind would be next on my list. And just in interest of process, I'm going to continue the public hearing on the gas franchise fee and simultaneously open the electric franchise fee. So we'll just be continuing on one stream. So please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, my name is Patti OKeefe. I am a Minneapolis resident of the 10th Ward, and I'm here representing myself as an energy user, but also as Minnesota 350, an organization working to build a climate justice movement in Minnesota. I'm also a member of EVAC, the Energy Vision Advisory Committee to the Clean Energy Partnership. So first, I want to say that myself and others who care about addressing climate change and equity issues are very, very excited, genuinely very excited to see this proposal for the franchise fee increase. We need a dedicated revenue stream to meet our rightfully ambitious energy goals, and particularly the goal of the 75% whole house retrofits by 2025. We also need the additional funding to effectively increase energy efficiency program participation with renters, low-income people, communities of color, immigrant communities. And so we encourage you all to pass this budget provision. However, I will say that this idea was generated in EVAC with the intention of ensuring that it was a dedicated revenue stream to fund programs that are more effective and equitable and get us closer to our 2025 goal and overall climate goals. And we feel that the fee increase is justified because additional funding could pay for programming that results in cost savings for Minneapolis residents, effectively canceling out, hopefully, the fee increase. That's why it's really important that we primarily be funding programs and primarily new programs or programs that do not have other sources of funding already dedicated to them. So I would advise against the franchise fee funding, being the only funding stream for sustainability in the city, because I think that sustainability shouldn't be an add-on. It should be integrated into everything that we do. And this funding can help build on the already great sustainability work that we're doing and funding. So again, Minnesota 350 is very excited to see the city stepping up and taking this proactive action to address climate change and equity issues, but we also need to make sure that it's allocated appropriately so that we actually meet them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lind, forgive the mispronunciation, and then Lisa Daniels, and then Bob Hulting.
I'm Ruth Lind. I live in Ward 7, and I love a good deal. I found this merino wool sweater at a thrift shop run by a local charity. I was pleased. Not only was it a bargain at $8, but I also knew that those dollars would stay local and do good things here in our community. The proposed franchise fee for clean energy is a similar win-win on a grander scale. What's not to like about yearly citywide energy savings of $285 million, while directing those savings toward our neighbors who struggle the most with their energy bills? If we can stop sending our dollars far away to buy fossil fuels and keep them here to stimulate our local green economy, we'll also create jobs. This is a strategic investment that can mimic the model of compound growth, which Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. The faster we turn toward clean local energy, the sooner we'll see the benefits expand. Less pollution, healthier environment, lower medical costs, fewer missed work and school days, enhanced homeland security, and less danger to our waters and soil. And, so important, we boost our effort to combat climate change. Just this past week, a headline on Bloomberg: Moody's announces cities and states that don't address climate risk will face downgrades in their credit rating. So let's lengthen the list of things to love about Minneapolis: bargains, bike trails, breweries, and clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Daniels, followed by Mr. Hulting.
Hello, my name is Lisa Daniels, and I am here as a citizen of Minneapolis, also as an executive director of a nonprofit called Windustry, which I have run for close to 20 years. And we focus on, Windustry focuses on community-based renewable energy. I'm also here as chair of the Climate and Energy Work Group in the Minneapolis Citizens Environmental Advisory Commission, otherwise known as CEAC. I wanted to say that I support the increase of the gas and electric franchise fee with the goals of increasing our energy savings and energy efficiency, reducing further reductions in our energy emissions and initiatives that accomplish that, and also renewable energy installations, increasing our renewable energy installations. All of this to be done with workforce development opportunities for all, keeping diverse populations in mind, as well as women, which have traditionally been a minority in the energy fields. So now is the time to make our energy and electric systems as efficient and clean as possible, especially at a local level. The time is now and here for the city of Minneapolis. This is a rare opportunity. And also especially because we see on the not so distant horizon, the electric transportation is coming our way pretty quickly. With the technology advances that we can see, they are swiftly coming our way, and we should have an efficient system in place as this transition happens. Electric transportation, renewable energy, and energy efficiency technology has tremendous climate and public health benefits, as well as savings for the consumers in terms of reduced fuel and maintenance costs. It also means significant benefits for our economy.
Ms. Daniels, are you finished? If you could wrap up.
Yep.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Hulteen, followed by Matt Grimley.
Committee Chair Quincy and members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Bob Hulteen, and I'm a resident of Seward neighborhood, the part that isn't represented by Councilman Gordon, but glad to be there. I urge you to support the small increase in the utility franchise fee, specifically for energy efficiency and clean energy programs. This measure is a simple, small impact mechanism that would make a significant difference. With a small increase in the cost for residential customers' monthly energy bill, it leverages money that can really make a real impact in energy efficiency and access to renewables for people in Minneapolis. As a homeowner, I'm aware that an increase is indeed still an increase, but I want those increases that I would pay to have impact, to be significant, and to be beneficial for all. I come to this work really as a person of faith, working in the Lutheran community. My bishop, who happens to also be my boss, Ann Svenningsson, is an outspoken supporter of renewable energies and energy justice. So I'd like to share one comment she recently made. Quote, "Our faith calls us boldly into the world for the sake of all creation. Transitioning to renewable energy as fast as we can get there is of critical importance. From those who breathe pollution every day to those dependent on good seasons to till the land, to future generations who hope for a healthy climate, this is an issue of caring for our neighbors and acting with justice." This fee would fund a range of solutions and programs to help Minneapolis residents and businesses access energy efficiency and clean energy, and to be working for justice and equity at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Grimley, followed by Richard Hollick.
Hello, thank you for having all of us. My name is Matt Grimley. I'm from Wisconsin originally, don't hate me for it. And I've lived in Minneapolis for 8 out of the 10 past years. I'm a graduate student at the University of Minnesota studying energy policy. I really became interested in energy after living in Appalachia, where I stood on a mountain in Southwest Virginia and saw across the valley a mountain all blown up, mountaintop removal coal mining. I won't forget it. In the age of climate change, we'll often ask who pays for what and who gets what benefit. And I know that our energy system isn't just. Here you know that energy efficiency programs, renewable energy programs, they're not accessible to low and moderate income individuals by and large. So if you're working a few jobs, you don't have the time, you don't have the ability to infer what all of these different technical standards mean. It's impossible. So increasing the franchise fee in Minneapolis is a great, great opportunity to address these problems for residents, to help them save money, and to change the way that we're using energy in the growing green economy. I think it's important that the city shouldn't stop at the 0.5% too, should seek a full percent increase, and should use those funds for new programs for underserved residents and communities across the city. The process should be accountable to the needs of the city and ongoing. And all of us in the city, we need to all pay so low and moderate income individuals can benefit from this in a way that they haven't before. I love Minneapolis, and I just want us to use the franchise fee for good in the city and to change what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holla, and then followed by Louis Almeida. My apologies in advance. Mr. Holla.
Thank you. My name is Richard Holloway, and I'm part of the Minneapolis Area Synod Eco-Faith Network. I work as a youth director at a Lutheran church in the area, and I'd like to share you a testimony from one of my colleagues. Pastor Martha Bardwell serves as a pastor in the congregation of Our Savior's Lutheran Church on Chicago Avenue in South Minneapolis. And these are her comments on the issue. She says, well, are we going to invest in growing a green economy here in Minneapolis or not? Increase the franchise fee 0.5% gives us the funds that can open possibilities for how we can make a faster and more just transition to a green energy economy. I support these monies being used to prioritize energy equity and energy cost savings. I see the whole purpose of the increase is to save people more money than the increase takes and rectify the current pattern of everyone paying into efficiency programs, but most energy users not being able to access benefits much or at all, like renters, small businesses, people, and organizations with low income or low credit, and residents and businesses whose primary language is not English. As a person of faith, I long for a city where everyone can live in a just and healthy neighborhood, where all can access energy that is efficient and clean, no matter their income level. We can work towards that vision by taking steps like this one that we have before us today, raising the franchise fee and dedicating the funds to building up an equitable green energy economy. Thank you.
Thank you. After this speaker, we have Mr. Rule Islam and then Ed Sutton. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Louis Alamayu. I've lived in the Seward neighborhood for at least 20 years. I'm a member of EVAC, also a board member of the North American Water Office. I teach at HECUA, the Higher Education Consortium for Urban Affairs, Environmental Sustainability, and I also teach at Common Ground, which is a Buddhist meditation center. We are in a historical moment of immense impact, locally and globally. We are in a time that no living person has ever seen before. It grows out of the past most immediately that emerges out of the Industrial Revolution, which is directly connected to colonization, empire building, and the reckless ravaging of the natural world. We are at a time when we must reclaim and practice a sense of what is sacred, the need for balance and harmony, and a profound affirmation of the simple truth that all life, all creation is intimately interconnected. It matters what we do to the water because what we do to the water, we do to ourselves. Adults are roughly 60% water, babies 80%. What pesticides, toxins we put into the soil and on the pollinators, we not only do to ourselves in present time, but also to future generations. The burning of oil, coal has given us grand metropolises all over the world. They are not now sustainable, and the burning heats up more than just the machines and furnaces they fuel. We have to sow new seeds of culture. We have citizens ready to dig in and do work, which actually means creation of a new democracy that represents all the people, regardless of how much money they have or don't, but rather promotes a livable planet. We need a way of life that won't be driven by what makes money, but rather what promotes and sustains life. If we want to meet climate action goals, equity goals, we need a dedicated, reliable stream of funding for clean energy and efficiency programs. Current programs do not have Minneapolis on track to reach its goals. Citizens who have already paid for present energy programs need to finally benefit. Green zones and renters are now needing to be the urgent priority. Our solutions must address human needs of health, education, good work that addresses real needs that support collective thriving. Animal, vegetable, mineral, we are one.
Thank you very much. Mr. Islam, followed by Ed Sutton and Lee Samuelson.
I'm here to support of increasing of 0.5% or more franchise fees so we can meet our climate and equity goal as a city. My name is Ruhail Islam and I'm owner of Gandhi Mahal restaurant. And Gandhi Mahal restaurant, our vision, we are working towards a energy independent, food secure community. And recently, we participate in a green cost sharing program. That was a blessing. It was a blessing. Almost like program, we put our new hood system in the kitchen. It was wonderful, working very nice. We were very, very happy about it. But also, we had to, the cost sharing program was almost 6,000 plus. But that was, that I feel like that could be also a barrier for small business, a lot of small business. My support is today here to increase that franchise fees because we need to continue this program. A lot of immigrant business owners in our corridor, they don't know about this program. And if they know, they don't want to participate because of those barriers. So that will really help if you can do something about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sutton.
Hello, Chairman, council members. I'm a Minneapolis born and raised, and currently a resident of Ward 9 in Powderhorn neighborhood. Though it may not seem super relevant at first, the first thing I'd like to do is speak in favor of the Minneapolis Renters Coalition's position for creating at least 2 new complaint-based housing inspector positions. This would be an aid to the energy benchmarking program for residential that is proposed by EVAC. As a renter myself, currently engaged in maintenance disputes with my shady landlord, I can only sing the praises of the Department of Regulatory Services, as well as the housing inspector I've worked with in the last several months to get grievous issues addressed. They're doing excellent work on behalf of Minneapolis renters with a high degree of integrity and should be commended. But the mountain is high and steep, and predatory landlords abound and still operate with a significant degree of impunity. Inspectors' ranks should be expanded and their vital work should be supported. And when things go right, they can have a significant impact on the lives and well-being of Minneapolis renters and our families. That said, there's only so much they can do. So the main thing I'm here to say, like so many others, is that as a renter and a working class resident of this city, I'm in favor of the proposed increase to the franchise fee. In fact, I think it should be more. As I understand it, the energy savings that this could unlock for me and other working class residents of Minneapolis through the programs and mechanisms currently being devised by EVAC and the Clean Energy Partnership will exceed the extra amount I'd be paying on my energy bills each month. But this is only true if the revenue created by the fee increase is actually put towards these programs. Word is getting around that there might be other plans or that the money will be directed away from energy equity programs after a year. Please remember that EVAC has been volunteering their time to think strategically about how to use this money in service of the city's own energy goals, including making efficiency retrofit programs available to 75% of residential properties, which will have to include many renters like me. And their proposal should not be taken lightly. Nor should the power and the interests of the working class in this city. I can tell you now that my comrades, my neighbors, and I will regard it as an insult and a double cross.
Sir, you need to wrap up if you're out of time.
Done. If this fee increase, which affects all customer classes equally and therefore regressively, is used to disproportionately benefit the already comfortable, or worse, if it is simply captured and rolled into the general fund, we'll be watching this very closely.
Thanks for your help. Mr. Samuelson, followed by Emily Bonby.
Chair Quincy, members of the committee, I would like to speak in favor of both the gas and electric franchise fee funding plan ordinances, and I have dutifully attended all 3 public info sessions which the city has organized for it. I have seen the partnership pioneering a community engagement approach to energy efficiency program uptake for consumers who may not fit into the marketing-based approach which utilities have typically and traditionally used. So I personally remember members of the partnership staff team sitting in one grant application after another to fund the community engagement pilot project, and the foundations have proved to not be reliable in that form, which makes the case for having this option before us today. And there are 3 different efficiencies which I see coming out of this clean energy franchise fee. Number 1, the extra 57 cents that the average residential customer will pay monthly will be returned back into our pockets many times over in the form of energy savings. Number 2, these new franchise fee dollars which the city spends will leverage the current utility energy efficiency incentives and conservation improvement dollars to be more effective. And number 3, in the Clean Energy Partnership, the city will collaborate its regulatory authority and neighborhood engagement assets with the utilities assets, such as programs, incentives, financing methods, and infrastructure, in a way that will make each more effective. And then all 3 of these efficiencies will synergize together. According to the staff report that we had just seen, I would like to close by saying the revenue from the 0%, the revenue from the 0.5% increase would be around the bare minimum needed for us to reach the climate and equity goals. I recall right here on the page number 18 of the Energy Pathway Study had recommended a 1% increase, but since the formal notice already sent out to the utilities sets it for 0.5%, the firm compromises that the dollars from the franchise fee increase should be used entirely for energy equity goals rather than be diverted to general fund programs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Emily, you'll be followed by Stan Sattinger.
Chairman, council members, my name is Emily Bouvier, and I'm a Minneapolis resident of the 6th Ward, speaking today also in favor of increasing the franchise fee to be used specifically for energy efficiency, clean energy, and equity. I think this kind of program is really exciting and makes all the sense in the world. We know we want to get serious about these goals and get back on track to meet them. And I find it really thrilling that right now we know it's working and that we're scratching the surface, but we have so much more that we can do. And we know that we're not going to make it to 100% of our goals with only 10% of people participating.
I'm really aware of my own limitations as a renter and living in Stevens Square neighborhood, which is overwhelmingly renter based. I'm really aware of the neighbors around me for whom that's true as well. I know my landlord's not going to be a major driver, and I find it hard to invest personally if I don't know how long I'm going to be there. But this franchise fee could fund a wide range of solutions and programs that would help Minneapolis residents and business owners alike be able to access energy efficiency and clean energy. This is really exciting because we can do not only more with these programs, but also really do it with inclusivity and a foundation of racial and economic equity. I support what's already been named as some of the top priorities, including multilingual and community-based approaches, inclusive financing, as well as job training and programs like the Green Business Cost Share Program. In my work with the faith community, I see these goals as deeply aligned with the work that we're already committed to, the values of the congregations that I work with, and the realities that congregations also face. I also do work with the Minneapolis Area Synod and know that programs that aren't streamlined and really accessible, and folks who are not actively reached out to, it's really hard for folks to participate on their own initiative.
That's up on time. I just didn't want to finish your sentence. You could? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate that very much. Mr. Settinger and Jessica Tritch.
Chair Quincy and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. I'm a South Minneapolis resident. I work part-time as a contractor on the RETAP program, which is Retiree Environmental Technical Assistance Program, a program of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We do assessments of energy use and waste for commercial and institutional buildings. We often come up with recommendations for major savings, like 20 and 30% are not uncommon, reductions in energy and carbon emissions. The frustration that we feel is, despite these good ideas, the rate of implementation of our recommendations takes place at a very low rate. And we think the reason for this is very simple. The cost to implement the findings, the recommendations, may be difficult for some clients to fund, to raise. So I would end with the request that all money that's going to be raised through inclusive financing should be used entirely for energy equity goals, particularly energy and cost savings that lower energy bills and tons of carbon emissions at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And after this speaker, we also have Tim Springer and then Akeisha Everett. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, council members. My name is Jessica Tritch. I'm a senior campaign representative with the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal to Clean Energy campaign here in Minnesota. And today I'm speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club North Star chapter in support of the proposal for an increase in the energy franchise fee for both gas and electric. As Minneapolis works towards its very ambitious climate goals and contemplates transitioning to 100% renewable energy community-wide, it needs funding sources devoted to expanding access to and adoption of energy efficiency and clean energy projects by its residents. The Sierra Club supports the proposed fee increase to be devoted solely to expanding access and adoption of energy efficiency and clean energy projects. Revenue from the franchise fees should prioritize energy equity and energy cost savings in order to return more money into people's pockets through energy savings. And specific programs supported by this revenue should be decided in a transparent process that includes ample community-wide input and engagement. This clean energy franchise fee provides a great opportunity for the city and its residents to move towards 100% renewable energy and ensure that the benefits of this transition are equitably distributed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Springer? You don't look like Tim.
Not Tim. Tim is in Michigan, but he gave me a letter to read to you.
Sure.
Tim's at
in the Phillips neighborhood. He's a landlord for 11 housing units and 5 buildings in Minneapolis. And he also apologizes for not being able to be here. Dear Ways and Means Committee members, thank you for considering the 0.5% increase in the city's utility franchise fee and for taking public input on this matter. I strongly support this franchise fee increase and believe that 100% of this increase should be used for new or expanded energy-related programs. I agree with the city's climate goals to wean us off fossil fuels and want to do my part. This should be done in a way that addresses social equity issues rather than exacerbates them. For example, by helping low-income households that have high energy cost burdens and bringing jobs to those who most need them. I am fortunate to have photovoltaic panels on my house and a tight building envelope. My solar array produces more kilowatt hours than I need during many months of the year. You might have seen these solar panels on the roof of my house perched at the top of 18th Avenue entrance to the ramp to the Midtown Greenway. I have paid for some energy improvements at rental properties too, and I'm excited to do more, but the upfront cost is a barrier. If funds were available to me, I would take advantage of them to reduce energy footprints and costs for my tenants and for myself. Finally, I support inclusive financing for energy efficiency and renewables and a robust and diverse community engagement process related to energy programs. This will allow persons in greatest need of energy cost savings to inform program design and take advantage of such programs. Sincerely, Tim Springer.
Thank you very much. Akeisha Everett, and then I have Kevin Lewis, but I don't know if Kevin's still here.
I'm also not Akeisha Everett, but am delivering a letter from her on behalf of the Neighborhood Hub, as well as Cal will also be speaking from the neighborhood's perspective. So thank you.
Same 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, Dear Ways and Means Committee, thank you for being committed to listening and valuing community voices as it pertains to the needs of residents at large. This letter is intended to lend our support for the franchise fee that is being proposed to your committee. The Neighborhood Hub, in partnership with the City of Minneapolis Coordinator's Office, Xcel Energy, Centerpoint Energy, and Partnership Planning Team collaborated to erect a pilot program called the Community Energy Efficiency Pilot Program. This pilot program that gave our Healthy Homes team funding to provide outreach and awareness to North Minneapolis. We were able to give information about low and no cost energy efficiency products and resources. We also provided resources for energy audits, weatherization kits, energy assistance, and lead assessments. As we did this important work, we surveyed the Jordan, Cleveland, and Falwell neighborhoods to find out why residents were not utilizing these products. And with this survey tool, we concluded that residents were simply unaware that these products were available at minimal or no cost to low-income families. We also observed that if residents did know of the cost-saving products, they were unaware of how to access these resources. Increasing the franchise fee 0.5% would leverage $2.9 million dedicated to improving energy efficiency and access to renewables in Minneapolis. The Neighborhood Hub believes that a portion of these dollars could contribute to a robust community-based approach to providing equity in the distribution of energy-efficient products and resources. Please consider increasing the proposed franchise fee.
Okay.
So bear with me, I didn't know I was supposed to sign up as well. I'll be fairly quick, Board, Chair Quincy, and Council members. My name is Cale Searson. I reside at 1410 Irving Avenue North. I'm the grant coordinator of the program she was talking about at the Neighborhood Hub, and I'm speaking on behalf of Akeisha Everett, who wasn't able to be here today. For the past 18 months, we've been working on a Healthy Homes initiative focused on 3 Northside neighborhoods. We've been collecting data on specific issues and asking questions such as why are Northside residents not using these programs that could help reduce bills and reduce our carbon footprint. What we found is our committee is not aware of the products and programs, and those that were aware of the programs didn't know how to navigate services to get these programs. With a 0.5% increase, the city could help provide education navigation around these issues and could potentially improve addressing some of the racial gaps in education and services. We at the Neighborhood Hub fully support the 0.5% franchise fee increase, and we truly believe that this could improve the quality of life in our city. I also have personal stories if you guys want to reach out that I could share, and I asked a few clients if they were open to share them, so I wanted to take the time and offer that to you guys if you'd like it. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments very much. And if both of the speakers, in particular you, Commissioner-elect Severson, if you could sign in with your address to keep the public record correct. Thank you, Rich. I also have Izzy Wilson on our list here, but first was Kevin Lewis, but I don't know if Mr. Lewis is here. Passed on. So Ms. Wilson, followed by Dwight Wiginius. Somebody I know, somebody.
Hi, my name is Izzy Wilson, and I'm a student at the University of Minnesota. I study biology, society, and environment with an emphasis on social justice and environmental sustainability. As a student, I care about my future, standing up for what I believe in, and actively participating in creating a better world for generations beyond me. For me and many other students, that future includes a more energy equitable, energy efficient world. Minneapolis has set climate action goals and equity goals and is not on track to meeting them. An increase in the franchise fee gives us the opportunity to get on track by funding a wide range of programs that support racial and economic equity. Everybody deserves access to a comfortable, healthy home. I don't think this is asking too much. We have the chance to eliminate barriers to accessing energy efficiency, and we should take full advantage of it. The additional $2 million can be put toward programs that address issues of inequity among Minneapolis residents. Low-income households and households of color often hold the heaviest burden on their energy bill, and in no way is that a just energy system. We should all have access to the cleanest, most efficient energy options, not just for our comfort, but for our health and well-being. It is time we address these inequities and start showing our planet the respect it deserves. We all live on this earth and shall have an equal opportunity to care for it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wiginius, followed by Dan Callison.
Thank you, Chair Quincy and members of this committee. I'm Reverend Dwight Wiginius. I'm community minister at Mayflower UCC in South Minneapolis on Diamond Lake Road. I'm also chair of the board of directors of Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. It's a Minnesota nonprofit dedicated to climate justice. Our office is in Minneapolis. We work with several hundred communities of faith, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Baha'i, etc., and several thousand people, individual people of faith, developing leadership and empowering people of faith in the climate justice movement. We all have a piece of the action, right? If the question is, what steps could the city take to ensure that clean energy and energy efficiencies are accessible to and benefit a broad cross-section of customers and customer classes, I think you're providing the right answer. So thank you. We support the proposal regarding both gas and electric. Now, my church, Mayflower, has a history of caring for creation and seeking racial and economic equity as missions of the church. We have resolved to be net carbon neutral by 2030 and are on the path to meet that. We have made our building as energy efficient as possible, and we've installed about 200 solar panels on our roof. They provide just about everything that they were planned to provide as far as electric energy. We have enough resources in our community to support that installation and those efficiencies. But right now, too many barriers keep low-income families and those with less than perfect credit from investing in clean renewable energy and energy efficiency improvements. It's time to remove those barriers so that all customers, regardless of income or credit score, can help Minneapolis meet its climate action goals, move toward 100% renewable energy, and by the by, build their family's wealth. At Mayflower and MNIPL, we believe that the renewable energy revolution should be accessible to everyone. It should promote economic, racial, and employment justice, reduce karma, and protect the natural world, and help us all be a part of the new story, not just some of us. We've participated enthusiastically in this inclusive task force. And when I went for renewal of my agreement with my church, I started talking about inclusive financing, and they said, Dwight, hold it down a little bit. You're a little too excited. This is, it's kind of the intricacies of this are kind of boring, and yet they are so important. What you're doing is the right thing. As moral people of faith, we support what you're doing. Everybody has a piece of the action here. Each of us is the special interest group that's being addressed by this.
Thank you, Reverend Goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Callison, followed by Alice Madden, and then Marcus Mills.
Chair Quincy and council members, I live in the 13th Ward, and I work in Wards 3, 5, 6, and 7. Wear a lot of hats. Easttown Business Partnership, 2020 Partners, Minneapolis Downtown Council, and First Covenant Church. As such, representing many organizations, it's difficult to say like exactly where they all land. That's hundreds, perhaps thousands of businesses and private sector organizations. And so I stand before you hearing from most of them saying we support, and we ask that as this gets framed up across residential, commercial, industrial sectors, that the city plays the fourth edge of that frame up in a very fiduciary responsible way that's been expressed several times before I've spoken. And that is that the comment that there is no fiscal impact anticipated, that the resources that are pulled through the franchise fee are indeed fed back directly to new programming, that there's a discipline to ensure that those sectors receive the resources to improve all it is we're trying to do, as opposed to any swap outs or shifting resources to existing or replacing existing funding. And so we support this and ask that it's truly plus factor so that all who are a part of this can benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Madden, followed by Marcus Mills.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Alice Madden, and I live in the central neighborhood. I support the increase of the franchise fee 0.5% and urge you to approve it. I would also note that there was a recommendation by CEE for a 1% increase in the Energy Pathways study 3 years ago. So I would reiterate the support, but also saying this isn't enough yet. Given the fact that it's not enough, I think it is imperative that all of these funds are used to their original purpose, which is saving people money. And the important part here is that it is a lot easier to achieve a huge cost savings for one big commercial or one big industrial company and say that we're saving citywide, when in fact the equity of that is not equity at all. I was part of the pilot program through EVAC for energy efficiency, and heard again and again renters showing interest in saving money and saving energy and saying, I don't think my landlord would invest. If they could invest, it's a whole bunch of money up front. And hearing from landlords the same thing of either they think they know already, they've already done piecemeal versions, but not a whole retrofit of a multifamily building. And just the upfront cost barrier is huge. Even if you're a big company and have a lot of properties, that's a massive investment. So inclusive financing and addressing the financing barrier is a key part of getting these programs actually to people. Even if they're a great idea, if people can't access them, there's no point. This is like a phantom energy plant that we're hooking up here. And unlike coal, unlike solar, not everyone's paying for that, right? And they're all getting the power. But if you hook up energy efficiency, it's piecemeal. So you have to make sure that everyone gets access to that. I'm concerned that this could be regressive if funds are diverted away from this purpose. I'm concerned it could be regressive if it's just focused on some large consumers and not actually getting the hard to reach customers that the utilities like to talk about a lot. Hard to reach means maybe they don't speak English. Hard to reach means they're not homeowners. Hard to reach means all kinds of other things that really just means we need community engagement with people who have relationships. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mills.
Hello, everyone. Chair Quincy, council members. My name is Marcus Mills. Many of you are familiar with me. I live in the Marcy Homes neighborhood, and I wish to speak in favor of both the electric and gas franchise fee increases. As you know, I wear many hats, including this one, among them business owner and community advocate. I wish to thank the council members and staff and advisors traversing the veins and arteries behind the scenes, helping this measure get this far. First of all, I know how tough that can be, and I wanted to make sure to begin with a little bit of praise as it's due. Those who know me have spent this praise bracing for the reverse. This increase needs to be more. Our goals are great in energy efficiency, in climate goals, and they are appropriate. And while this is a good start, it is not quite enough, and we need to be moving further and moving forward. We need these funds raised directly to energy goals, equity goals, and the community engagement necessary to ensure that people benefit from these concepts as intended. We also need to ensure that there's oversight, that the EVAC committee, full of stakeholders that care about these issues and have a vested interest in making sure that this money is spent as wisely as possible, are watchdogging this process and are intended to by ordinance. We need to make sure that we are putting the money that we pull from this particular idea to accomplish very specific goals. One of the refrains that I heard in talking to many council members, staff, and constituents was we need to make sure that this money isn't just raised and thrown into the general fund, that it has very specifically delineated purposes. And since I heard that from every corner, that's what I expected. I've found out that we're not quite there yet. And we need to ensure that because that's what everyone was expecting when they heard that we were using the money raised from the utility franchise fee for energy purposes. It was a major part of many sources of the votes that went out over these past months.
Mr. Mills, your time's up. If you could wrap it.
Absolutely. So I thank you for the efforts that you've come to so far, and I hope that we can get this aligned properly so that everybody sees that the work we've done was worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Are there additional people? This exhausts the list of people who have signed up, but if you'd like to speak, please do. If you could provide your name and address for the record.
Hello, Sean Grzeszewski, Executive Director, Alliance for Sustainability. I live in Corcoran neighborhood 3132 22nd. And so, hello everyone. Thanks so much for moving this forward with both the natural gas and electricity franchise fee increase. We are speaking in favor of that. And the big reason I'm looking at today is that the Twin Cities is moving rapidly to have many of our other cities adopting community-wide energy goals like Bloomington, Edina, St. Louis Park, Eden Prairie. And none of the cities really know how to get it done yet. And so by having Minneapolis having solid funding to implement your climate action plan, we hope to generate lessons that can be shared with all the other additional big cities in the Twin Cities, including St. Paul. One of the big areas would be just effectively reaching all your biggest energy users through the incentive grants and other things to build upon the energy benchmarking ordinance. We hope the energy benchmarking ordinance can be extended to multifamily buildings because of the split incentives. Many property owners don't want to make investments. We also feel it's important to have inclusive solutions, options for people to do financing on bill, as well as looking at the neighborhood 2040 goal, the neighborhood 2020, like re-envisioning neighborhood groups to look at how they could maybe get funding through this to work on energy outreach. And then on the back side of my handout, we have a number of other strategies you should pursue in terms of a sustainable building policy for new buildings being built to be efficient, looking at also updating the climate action plan to include way more on transportation, take advantage of electric vehicles, bike pad, transit-oriented development, autonomous vehicles, and the shared mobility. And then looking at also moving forward with your 100% renewable power goal for the city operations. So thanks again. Make sure to use policy and not just the money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead if you could give your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Donna Olson, and I actually live in Brooklyn Park, but I'm here representing Minneapolis because I know my story is similar to many stories here in Minneapolis. I come to you to be the face and the voice of what many people have said here today. I am a person of low income living on SSDI and in Section 8 housing. So I understand exactly what it is to try and live in a place where you sit in your living room and you can watch when all your windows are closed and see your blinds blowing. And not have any recourse to do that. Statistically, I found out that my apartment complex is not officially listed as a low-income property, and therefore I do not qualify for Excel's programs. So I'm looking into other sources, but it could be very hard. and I do not qualify because of my income and my credit score for upfront costs. I can't afford upfront costs and wait for a reimbursement. So I come to you with that face. I also come representing a church that I am starting called Hope for All. It's an interfaith community here in Minneapolis, and we represent all faith communities and traditions and spiritualities. And I come to you today to say that I support this franchise fee. And I support it because it is a way for you to provide hope for all.
Thank you very much. And assuming is our final speaker, go ahead.
Chair Quincy, members of the council, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Brett Smith. I'm a 13th Ward resident. I've been in that area for about 35 years in Minneapolis. I'm retired. I'm a volunteer active with both the Sierra Club and Minnesota 350. The thing that I want to bring to attention today is that I'm a grandfather. I have 4 grandchildren ranging in ages from 13 down to 7. And I care about climate change because I want them to be able to live in a world that is livable, just, diverse, and has the kind of physical and social attributes that we have enjoyed in the past. They might live into the 22nd century, and climate change threatens them severely. It threatens all of us, but it threatens those who will live that long with a very, very dark future. So that's why I care about this. That's why I give volunteer hours to try to work it. The second thing I want to say is that our task here has been made much more urgent by the actions of the federal government under President Trump. When he pulled us out of the Paris Agreement, it was a dark day. And Congress also has turned its back on climate change. And so the hope of actually doing things is falling to states and cities, churches, individuals, communities. And that places this decision regarding the fee in a very significant context. So while there are many other reasons to support this franchise fee, cleaner air, lower energy costs, more jobs, the main reason that I would support it is because of its important impact, not only here, but globally on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Any further speakers? Further speakers? Seeing none. I'd like to close both public hearings, and thank you very much for the testimony that we received. Just to put this out in front of us for action today, I'm thrilled to have this action taking shape over the time, and that didn't happen without the great partnership of not only our staff in the Sustainability and Health Department and the Coordinator's Office, as well as the Mayor's Office. I have to recognize Council Vice President Glidden for her work on this, and Councilmember Gordon, and my co-author on this ordinance is Councilmember Reich. The Clean Energy Partnership is we've all said it, first in the nation, and it spawned the EVAC, and with the input from SEAC, and we can have alphabet soup all day in this organization. But it's really amazing when all of our community partners and our stakeholders, including our partners at CenterPoint Energy and Excel Energy, come together on something that is this significant and advances our combined goals and values for the city. So I'd like to move approval of both of the ordinance amendments that are before us today and invite comments or questions from my colleagues. Not seeing any? Okay, thank you very much. I think they're saving it for a different council meeting. But all those in favor of the 2 ordinance amendments as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those items carry. Thank you very much. Well, there's still several discussion items on our agenda. And I think we're going to begin by the participatory budgeting. This is a follow-up to the staff direction. And we're joined by our Deputy CFO, Lori Johnson. So whenever you're ready, Ms. Johnson, look forward to that presentation.
Chair Quincy and committee members, thank you. Lori Johnson, Deputy Chief Finance Officer, here today to speak to a staff directive regarding participatory budgeting and the request to draft a plan for participatory budgeting. The staff directive was dated December 7, 2016, and since then we have done a considerable amount of work. I'm just going to run through that for you quickly. In March, we hosted training that was completed by Maria Haddon of the Participatory Budgeting Organization. We also had a presentation to the engagement design team, and on September 18th came before this committee with a proposal to develop a playbook as such that could be used for PB whenever the council or department so chose, and that is something that you agreed to, and that is the work that we have done since that time. November 2nd and 3rd, Maria Haddon was here again for 2 days worth of design work sessions. There were 16 participants in those work sessions, including 2 members from CLIC and 1 who also represented NCEC. So we had a broad representation at that design meeting. In addition, we had a core group consisting of Nuri Rivera Mandervite from the City Coordinator's Office, David Rubador from NCR, Casey Carl from the City Clerk's Office, and Micah Intermill, our budget director, and myself, who are a core group to keep this project moving. And I appreciate all of the assistance from everyone who participated. We did receive a lot of great comments from the various departments and CLIC members, and discovered in the process that we have departments who do much of this work already. They just don't call it PB. And of course, CLIC is a form of PB as well. So just for those who aren't familiar, a quick rundown of what is PB. It is in addition to existing public engagement opportunities related to budgets. As you know, we've had budget hearings the last week, and we'll have one this week. Those are opportunities for engagement. This is above and beyond that. It is something that is not one size fits all. Various cities do it very differently, from small amounts to large amounts, from an annual process to a sporadic process as needed. It's very labor intensive and hard work. Perhaps most importantly, it must be transparent with commitment to the process and outcome from all parties involved. Participatory budgeting organization states done poorly, it can damage relationships. Therefore, we want to make sure that we have a process in place that everyone understands and agrees to before we enter into doing PB in Minneapolis. A few highlights of the Minneapolis playbook. It is scalable to size and scope. We didn't size it for any specific project. It is flexible so it can change. It manages expectations for the stakeholders, laying out roles for staff, stakeholders, residents, and officials. It provides a process and guidelines for PB, but it is flexible because we know that scope can change. And also, if adopted, it would be amended based on lessons learned from a 2018 pilot project. We know that cities often go into PB with a defined process and they end up changing that because it just doesn't quite work the way they anticipated. We expect that that would happen here as well. Here are a few highlights of the Minneapolis PB process. It requires an approved budget allocation that provides clarity of outcome and amount as the residents go into discussion. It requires council approval, or department's home committee must approve, because the department can also recommend a PB process for that budget allocation. It has a defined public process that we'll go into a little bit more in detail, but it outlines expected timelines, methods of engagement, number of events, and decision-making process. And the council has final approval of PB recommendations per the proposed playbook, part of that dealing with your responsibility to constituents and the fact that you must ensure that we follow all of the public expenditure doctrine guidelines. And here are a few highlights of the public process. So there would be a presentation to the community about the allocation and what the goals are, the outcome parameters, and then review of roles and responsibilities. The process then would be to gather community input. They would provide ideas, work with staff on various projects to come up with solutions that meet whatever that allocation's objectives could be. And those objectives could be very narrow or they could be very broad. Then the group would prioritize those proposals and make a recommendation to the council similar to what CLIC does as well. And throughout this process, NCR department would be engaged in the community meetings and helping to lead all of that community process. So finally, if approved, we would work to identify a 2018 pilot after the budget adoption occurs. NCR, as I said earlier, would lead the community engagement process, and then we would come back with lessons learned to refine the playbook for future years. And again, additional specificity would be added to the document at that time once we know how it works, how it plays in with the allocations that we have and the desires of the community and the council. With that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Council Vice President Glidden.
Thanks. I had a couple of questions. One, what do you see as that process around identifying the 2018 pilot? When, how would that work? And would you go back to the council to seek approval, or would you consider you have approval to select a pilot? So that's sort of a process and timing question. And then my next question is, you say refine process based on lessons learned from the pilot. So when are you anticipating your goal is to finish with all this pilot work? Because that affects when there might be any proposal for actually utilizing participatory budgeting within a actual budget process or whatever that looks like. So I'm just trying to get some idea as to the trajectory. And clearly, you have to work with what the policymakers in the end direct to happen, and I recognize that. So I'm somebody who's a fan of this, but my time here is ending. We have a new mayor, we have many new council members, so I understand, just to put it out there, you are working that in that environment, and others who are interested in this process should be aware of that too.
Right. Chair Quincy, Vice President Glidden. Yes, the timing of that pilot project would be either that the council could direct, or we would select one and come back to you early in January, say this is the project that we anticipate using for our pilot. We anticipate getting that done quickly. As you can see, there's some timelines in the guidebook. It would take months, not the full year, but it would take months because we do want to structure it and do it properly. So hopefully we'd be able to be back to the council in summer and then refine the process so that it is ready at any time. However, we think that there is enough structure to it at this point so that we could use it for most any project or budget allocation that the council would select.
I think just building on that, if I may, Ms. Johnson, the CLIC process, which is a participatory budgeting process in and of itself, makes a recommendation to the mayor in advance of the proposed budget for the following year. So how might this impact the 19 budget as well as spending within the 18 budget? And would it be in a recommendation format, or that gets back probably to the decision-making criteria that you outlined earlier? I just thought you could kind of highlight that.
Certainly. Chair Quincy, council members, yes, the timing would depend. Again, this is kind of an after the fact where there is a budget allocation already approved. So we're saying we're spending money for, in 18, we have a request for some sort of community engagement around that. And then that project would occur in 2018, hopefully. So that is the timing. The council could say, here is this amount of money, we want this to be subject to participatory budgeting. We would work through the process depending on the scope of that. It could take a shorter time, but again, right now what we're saying is that it is an approved allocation, so they're working on something that is approved. Some cities do it a little bit in reverse of that. The way this is laid out is such that the council would have already approved something. And again, it could be a very broad approval, but then we know that there's a set dollar amount, and then we go about allocating that. If the mayor or council were to recommend that an allocation be put in the 2019 for use with participatory budgeting, then we would know that and we would be able to put that in the 2019 budget. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much. Good. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. Then I'll go ahead and move approval of the playbook for participatory budgeting process within the city. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Thank you very much for your work and for following up on the staff direction. And it's been a long time coming, but you did a terrific job pulling it together.
Mr. Chair, I just want to acknowledge also, and if I may,
go ahead, Councilmember Gordon.
I've been very involved in this process, and I just want to commend the finance staff for their involvement in getting into this. And it was there was willingness and excitement to get into the subject, even though I have to say I suspect when they got into finance as a profession, they weren't expecting to be involved in a participatory budgeting process. But I got to participate in the workshops and many meetings throughout this, and I really appreciate them coming back with a good recommendation and I think a prudent step to take. So.
Thank you very much for your comment.
That out there.
Appreciate that. Next item is actually, we have two items associated with. I'm going to let Mr. Ruff, if they're going to be taken up separately or kind of an overview, I'll leave it to you, but thank you.
Chair Quincy, members of the Ways and Means Committee, I'm Mark Ruff, the city's Chief Financial Officer, and thank you, Councilmember Goodman, I wouldn't make that mistake very often. Councilmember Gordon, from those kind words. One of the things that makes our job interesting is we can jump from participatory budgeting to a consolidated office building. So thanks again. The committee is familiar with this project, but it's also helpful to always go back and review the actions to date. And so we're going to do that a little bit today, give you a design update. And we have members of our design and construction team here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as give part of this presentation. Some key dates coming up in 2018, and then also give you an update on our ramp exchange land acquisition process, as well as a recommendation of the two bids that are before you for action items today. Just for those not familiar, the city has several facilities across the core downtown area, all the way on the west side there. The first precinct, which will not be changing as a part of this, the fire station number 1 toward the east side of this is one of our oldest fire stations. We will be looking at a new facility, assuming some redevelopment sometime in the near future of that block, but we actually did look at incorporating Fire Station 1 into a consolidated office building that we reviewed in the program development, decided it was not the best use of the space, but certainly still see that need. But also within our office needs outside of City Hall, we have 5 facilities that we either own or that we're leasing space that are on this map, and we are just now adding a 6th. We are now leasing some space in the Grain Exchange building just because of our additional efforts with road reconstruction. The Public Works folks are expanding into that space as well. We own the City of Lakes and the Public Service Center. The rest are leased spaces. Some key dates, going all the way back to 1906 when the city moved into this building, has shared it all the way through its history with the county. The county now today utilizes 40% of this building. And so we have several hundred people working in this building and will continue to work in this building. We're not going to reduce our size and number of people within the footprint of this building. We probably will be expanding as the county consolidates its space as well. But back in 1999, council did direct staff to not put any more money into the Cities of Lakes building and the Public Service Center. Those are 1950s era building. By the time we look at the construction of this building, those will be close to 65 years old. So certainly a healthy lifespan for those buildings, but were not constructed for today's workplace. 2014, a committee was formed. I believe Chair Quincy, you are one of the committee members, as well as Councilmember Goodman, Councilmember Fry, and then John Stiles from the mayor's office. Had worked at reviewing 13 site options for a new consolidated office space. Endorsed one site, which was the Government Center ramp in 2016. Pursuing some discussions, we looked at then moving and swapping the site or exchanging ramps with Interpark, which owns the ramp on 4th Avenue. And so that is the action that was taken in 2016 and 17. We also hired, as a owner's rep, CPMI, as well as Perkins and Will, an architectural firm, to do a program development and really emphasize the public service of this building so that it's not only easier for city workers, which certainly helps in recruiting, but more importantly is easier for citizens to navigate city services. And then we did end up hiring architectural and construction team, which I'll be introducing in a few minutes. The site that we're looking at for this new office building faces the Hennepin County Square. It is 1 acre. It has 974 stalls. We are exchanging then with that owner's the larger government center ramp, which has over 1,300 stalls. This is the ramp that we are talking about that will be coming down and be replaced by the office building. Internal team members, the council is familiar with FSAM, a group that's been around for several years. It has rotating 2 department heads and then also permanent members as the city coordinator and the public works director. They are still very involved. We are meeting every other week as FSAM. We also created something new internally, and that's a design advisory team to advise FSAM. This design advisory team has 1 member of each of the departments that is proposed to be moving into this building. Kim Keller is chairing that group. She's here if you have any questions, but I've just been very impressed at how that group has come together and looking at the details of how we lay out this facility, again, from a public service perspective as well as from an employee standpoint. Chuck Lutz, Greg Goki, myself, and the communication staff are involved on weekly meetings with this. And we do have our HR staff and city coordinator, deputy city coordinator working on transition management as we talk about how do we reduce paper, how do we move to a different workspace for our employees. The external team members that are, I believe, all represented here today, Henning Larson MSR is the architects. MSR is a local firm, Henning Larson out of their New York office supporting us. Burrow Happel out of Chicago is the engineering firm. Owner's rep is CPMI. Susan Jones is our primary contact there. Mortensen, Darren Knapp from Mortensen is here as well as Peter Braun helping us with engagement process that we have started and will expand here as the building begins to take shape. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our architectural team members. I'm going to have the team members introduce themselves as we come along, and they'll be able to give you a little more background.
Great. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Matthew Kruntrad. I'm a principal architect with MSR Design. I'll be representing the larger team in an overview of the project now. So there's a broader extension of the team here should you want to have questions for other design architects or city staff that have been supporting the process to date. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the strategic concept, and this is really being built upon the work that Mark mentioned earlier with Perkins and Will. They put together a program document and strategic concept ranging from pride and place, identity, to excellence in public service, budget, flexibility and adaptability, safety, and when it really comes together as city as one, the idea of concept for consolidated office building. These are really guiding principles. These are things that during the design conversations, everything comes back to try to make sure that we're following true to the guiding ideas of the project. Overall, what you're seeing here is the idea of this welcoming public entry. So public service is at the core of it. This image shows you the idea here is a real open, welcoming first 2 floors where public service occurs and staff is supported through that space in terms of the interaction with the public. Early concept work, so just at the very beginning phases of the schematic design. Walking through the levels, level 1, right off 4th Ave, lobby space with a conferencing center, building core supporting it and giving good wayfinding and access with MPD and service support docks in the back, which abut the adjacent parking garage. Again, catty corner from City Hall. As you move up to the 2nd level, there's public access area as well as connectivity to the Skyway system with the public service area there easily discernible from both levels and off into the street. Existing Skyway system connects through the parking garage that's adjacent. And the public service approach is really customer-centric and service first. So there's a change here that's happening. That's all being managed with the larger team in terms of what it means, but bringing that to the foreground in interaction.
Thank you. Just real quick, Councilmember Johnson. Didn't know if you wanted now or...
Mr. Chair, I just have some feedback.
Sure.
I can wait till the presentation, though. That's fine, too.
It's up to you.
I'll wait. That's
okay,
fine.
Thank you.
The resiliency strategies, again, this goes to the core concepts. You can find a little bit of this in every one of the concepts, but adaptable and survivable structural systems, high performance, low maintenance exterior, energy efficient mechanical and electrical systems, and redundant electrical communications infrastructure. Again, the adaptability in terms of security strategy, something that's being looked at, and continuity of an operations plan. From a sustainability standpoint, the overall project goals is LEED version 4, gold certificate, and version 4, if you're not familiar, is much more aggressive than previous versions. This is a good high level of approach to it, 12 prerequisites and 44 electives. That's all being looked at. Again, we're in the early schematic design phase. We've been looking at all kinds of options. We can discuss that further if you have any questions. Fit well as well, looking at how the building operates from a health and wellness standpoint and how it engages both staff and customers. So there's a certification of a 1-star rating with 61 strategies. Yeah. From overall anticipated project timeline, key date here today is 12/4, where we're talking to you. We're into the schematic design. We've finished a program evaluation, looking at that, and beginning with initial floor plans. So you can see we're still in the early phases of it. Design development will begin shortly, and key date would be when you start to see things happening. The garage demo would begin in 6/18. But you can take a look at this and ask about any of the detail about what happens when if you have some questions.
Councilmember Johnson, would this be an appropriate time for your question?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to offer some feedback on the layout. I wanted to make sure that the public service area has enough space for a municipal design center, which is something the coordinator's office is working on. I was interested in a larger retail presence on the first floor, especially for incubator space for small businesses. And I wanted to throw it out there. I was checking out the Bullitt Center in Seattle and was really impressed with the sustainable features that they've incorporated into that building and their approach, specifically the Living Building Challenge. And I know that's in the same kind of category as LEED certified, and was interested in how this building is and isn't following those principles of the Living Building Challenge, and would just encourage you to really maximize those features. I think we have a real opportunity, similar to the Bullitt Center, to make this building a prime example, not just architecturally from the outside, but also in terms of its features and sustainability, in a way that hopefully we can serve as a model for others and help inspire the similar sustainable elements in the building and features that can be used elsewhere in other projects.
Definitely. We do have programming working on retail on the first level, which is mainly right now with the lobby area and space that's allowed for a grab and go type thing. But we're also continuing to look at the program in terms of how it works. So there's options that are being studied with that in mind, along with the conferencing center and how those things work. Yeah, we have a limited amount of space, so every bit that engages the public is important. That's what we're looking at right now. From a sustainability standpoint, this is we're looking at a 75+ year building. Inherently, that has to be sustainable, and it's the way it's put together. Especially with LBC, that's a very aspirational piece, and we're looking at options right now as to what fits best to meet those 75-year goals. As I showed you earlier in one of the other slides, the resiliency and the durability maintenance of the facility. Healthy materials is a big piece of that, along with the fit well. So those all things reach into LBC, and we're looking at options at those things.
Excellent. I was just very impressed with that building out there in Seattle. Even just thinking about how they had, for instance, a commercial composting system for their wastewater, and I believe they only had a sewer connection as an emergency backup. And they were able to handle all the rest on site. And so it's those kind of elements I'd be very interested in seeing incorporated.
Thank you for your input.
Good. Thanks very much. Mr. Ruff?
So, Mr. Chair, just specific to the items here in front of you, there is a demolition contract that we are recommending award to Carlton Companies. We did receive 5 bids. Carlton was substantially lower than the other bidders. We have gone through our due diligence and are comfortable with their bid and Again, Mortensen is here, has both they and CPMI have done research specifically on this particular bidder who is new to the city, but some of their staff actually are very familiar with the city. The second is an IT audiovisual consultant, recommendation to Technology Management Corporation. We did receive 6 bids. And then in the coming months, some things that will be coming up before the council, we have public art RFP out that has just closed in the last week, and so we'll be coming forward with that. Again, part of making this a welcoming building is not just the exterior design, but the interior feel of the building and some ownership from the community as opposed to something that is viewed as more sterile and really more owned by the employees. We want this to be more of a place where anybody from the city of Minneapolis would feel comfortable and be able to find their way around without difficulty whatsoever. So those will be some of the things that will be moving forward in a short period of time. The closing on the land is scheduled for December 14th. And so while that ramp will be operated on a lease basis by the current owners until June, we will be the fee owner of the land, and they will be the fee owner of the government center after December 14th.
Okay. Thank you. I did have a question on the demolition bid. Just wanted to make sure, because it was significantly, as I looked at the competitive of the 5 bids, it was significantly less. I wanted to make sure that we were comfortable not only with the cost being that as it was, which is a terrific value. Just want to make sure we're making consistent with our project labor, or PLAs, and with prevailing wages on and
Sure.
whatever local talent could be used as the workforce.
Mr. Chair, certainly one of the members of the construction team can answer in more detail if you're interested, but just as we did with the Target Center, we have goals on recycling materials for that facility, and we're comfortable this firm will be doing that. We will have this whole project be under a project labor agreement with the city, not with the contractors, but with the city, and we have had initial discussions with the local trades about, and they seem comfortable with this firm as well. So we are confident that we will be able to meet all of the city's long-standing goals and traditions about how we undertake construction projects, remembering that this is a little different than Target Center because we will be holding the contract as the city, and Mortensen is our manager, as opposed to on the Target Center, Mortensen was the actual owner and holder of all of those contracts. And so we will structure them more individually, but we are certainly working towards a mixture of the council's goals, one of which is to try to get as much in the target market program as possible, but also recognizing that sometimes target market is not it helps small businesses, may not help meet some of the overall workforce and diversity goals from women and minority-owned businesses being a part of this as well. And so that's one of the benefits of having an experienced firm like Mortensen is how do we structure those bid packages to be able to maximize both of those goals of the city.
Good. Thank you very much. Are there additional comments or questions either on the design team or for Mr. Ruff, Mr. Goki? Thank you very much for bringing both of these items forward. I think I'd like to move both items for approval. If like any additional comments, questions? All those in favor of items 49 and 50 as the printed agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is both carry. Thank you very much, everybody. The final item on our agenda is it's a request by Officer Griffin for reimbursement for criminal defense fees. Mr. Nielsen, could you give us a quick discussion, either from your position there? Fine.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Quincy. I appreciate it. Before you is a request for reimbursement of criminal defense fees by Officer Michael Griffin. The request stems from 2 use of force incidents that occurred in May of 2010 and November of 2011. Officer Griffin was indicted by a federal grand jury with 9 counts of excessive force, perjury at civil deposition, and filing false police reports. The matter proceeded to a jury trial. He was found not guilty on 6 of those counts. The jury was unable to return a verdict on the other 3. Ultimately, a mistrial was declared. Prior to the federal prosecution, civil lawsuits were filed with regard to each of those incidents. And should note the city defended and indemnified Officer Griffin in both cases. The May 2010 matter settled prior to trial with a payment of a sum of money that included attorney's fees. The second civil suit proceeded to trial, and a jury found in favor of Officer Griffin on the claims of excessive force and unlawful arrest brought by 2 of the plaintiffs, and on the unlawful arrest claim by the 3rd. However, The jury found him liable on the claim of excessive force with respect to the third plaintiff and awarded compensatory and punitive damages. There's a Minnesota state statute that addresses the reimbursement of criminal defense fees for local government employees. It's Minnesota Statutes 465.76, and it states that if reimbursement is requested by the officer or employee, the governing body of a home rule charter city may, after consultation with its legal counsel, reimburse the officer or employee for any costs and reasonable attorney's fees incurred by the person to defend charges of a criminal nature brought against the person that arose out of the reasonable and lawful performance of duties for the city. So the statute does require that reimbursement of criminal defense costs can only occur if the charges arose out of the reasonable and lawful performance of duties for the city. In 1983, the City Council did adopt a set of factors to evaluate these requests, and those are laid out in your RCA. There are 6 factors. They are factors that the City Attorney's Office provided some analysis of in your RCA, and they're factors for you to weigh, in addition to the requirement that the charges arose out of the reasonable and lawful performance, which is dictated by the statute. And I would suggest to analyze that factor, it's largely borne out by the 6-factor test that the City Council adopted. And so before you today is a discretionary decision on the part of the council. The statute notes that the council may reimburse. So the options, you have the full panoply of options before you, from a denial of reimbursement if you find that the actions do not constitute reasonable and lawful performance of duties, to partial reimbursement based on some percentage allocation that you would see fit, to full reimbursement. And for full reimbursement, you must determine that the actions constitute the reasonable and lawful performance of his duties. This matter originally came to the council in May of this year. There was an original RCA at that time from the City Attorney's Office, which recommended denial. However, the council requested additional information, and that is the current RCA that's before you, that does not have a recommendation, but does provide a more fulsome picture of past reimbursements. With respect to reimbursement request cases where the criminal case was actually charged and proceeded to trial, as it did here, the most recent example that the office has been able to locate involved the council's approval of a request by Sergeant William Chaplin, and that was in October of 1983. Noting that that was before the adoption of the state statute that I've quoted for you, which was in 1984. So with that, in terms of evaluating past precedent, keep that in mind as well. With that, the matter is before the council, and it's at your discretion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nielsen. Can you just highlight again, what's the total amount that Officer Griffin is requesting?
So the City Attorney's Office also did evaluate should the council be inclined to approve a reimbursement in full or in part the fee request. And it was he paid his criminal defense attorney a flat fee of $75,000, which, based upon evaluation of the case and the fact that it proceeded to trial, we do believe that that is a reasonable amount, should the council be inclined to approve it in full or part.
As in terms of the fee that was charged was appropriate to the client.
That's correct.
Okay. You said that there were several cases. Was it 2 that he was acquitted on, and then just 1 ended up in a damage?
That's correct. There was 1 federal criminal prosecution that involved both events, and 2 civil lawsuits that stemmed from those events. On the federal criminal prosecution, he was found not guilty on 6 of the 9 counts, and the jury was unable to reach a verdict on the remaining 3.
Okay, 6 of 9. Thank you. Okay, any questions, comments from council members? Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to mumble my way through this. I think this is a really difficult case. I think it was difficult enough that we delayed the decision-making in this for about 7 months to get to this point. I remember we were in closed session talking about one or both of these cases and the facts of the cases and those sorts of things. And, you know, the, I guess, unfortunate part about this is that some of the facts of those that arose from those specific cases aren't here necessarily just to give us background as to what happened. But, you know, from recollection, I can tell you that I was sitting in the closed sessions feeling uneasy just about both of the matters just because the facts just were not very good. You know, and ultimately the city decided to settle on both those cases so that we would save taxpayers money by settling instead of just going to trial and probably losing a lot more money. And so those two situations, you know, when I look at the test, which is arising out of the reasonable and lawful performance of duties for the city, well, I mean, we became responsible for that. And so, you know, I look at the 6 factors, and I think, I mean, the most, I think, important factor among the 6 is just the impact on morale. And, you know, with this, the advice from our city attorney is just that it's discretionary, it's based on us. And, you know, I don't think we can ever measure what that means in terms of the impact on morale. But I would also say that when you look at these cases, they're rare. The last case that we can point out is the 1983 case that arose that caused us to create this task force that got to these 6 factors. And, you know, the good news is that at least for police officers, we won't be paying for any of this ever again because the police union has created a system to cover legal fees in the future. And so, you know, when I look at all this stuff, I mean, I think that, you know, my best guess as to the impact on morale is that it would be pretty bad in terms of the impact that it would have on the morale of the police department, but also just the city as a whole and its employees. And, you know, when it was pointed out that there were several cases as well that, you know, maybe a little bit different, but somewhat similar in terms of council members that have been indicted or, you know, in those processes, and that the city did indemnify them for that as well. And so when I look at all that stuff, you know, I am of the opinion it is difficult to make this decision, especially here when, like, I feel like it's the end of the year. I just kind of want to coast and just be gone, but I have to make a tough decision here. And I look at this and I think I feel like it's appropriate for us and to indemnify fully. And I say that just because I think Officer Griffin is probably not a great example, but I think when you look at future folks, including council members and their staff that could potentially be indicted, I think that it's important to protect them in that sort of situation. And so, Mr. Chair, I will move, and I recognize that there will be differences of opinion, but I will move that we indemnify fully the $75,000.
I'm sorry, the 75,000? Right. Okay, thank you. On the Councilmember Yang's motion, since it's in front of us, any further discussion or comments on that? I guess I'm struggling a little bit more on the full indemnification because it got to this point. But rather than making any alternative, I see things going up. Okay, we'll go with Councilmember Bender first.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. You know, the city attorney had offered us briefings, and I just didn't get a chance to do that with the budget happening, so I apologize for that, and I appreciated the offer. So I'm noting, and I'm reminding myself of the facts here too, that the officer was on personal time during the incidents, and I wondered if the city attorney could remind us of that situation. It feels like it's an important piece of this, whether or not the city should indemnify an officer who's acting, you know, in the line of duty versus during personal time.
Yes, Chair Quincy, Councilmember Bender. That would be also direct your attention to Factor 2. With regard to both incidents, Officer Griffin was not on duty, was not employed in an off-duty capacity at the time of the incidents that led to criminal charges.
So I just know that that's a significant factor for me as I weigh this. Again, understanding that, you know, our officers are, when they're on duty, are putting themselves in the line of danger on behalf of the people of Minneapolis, but that these incidents did not happen in that capacity. makes it hard for me to support a full indemnification in this particular situation.
Additional questions, comments? Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Chair, I'd be more comfortable moving this forward without recommendation. I just want to throw that out there for my colleagues and see if, test the waters, see if anybody else feels that way.
Councilmember Glidden.
I'd support that right now.
All right.
I think he's made a motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, then I would move to amend Councilmember Yang's motion and move this forward without recommendation.
Okay.
Substitute motion.
Understand the point. I'd love to do committee work in committee, but I think in this point there is a motion actually for a full indemnification, which we could vote no on. And I think in light of that, I'm going to take it up for recommendation to substitute for moving forward without recommendation. All those in favor of without recommendation, move forward, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That item is the end of the agenda, and I'd like to remind people this is the final meeting of the Ways and Means Committee for this term, and just wanted to minor point of privilege to say what a pleasure and honor it was to serve with you all on this committee, and I really appreciate everybody's hard work, participation, and consideration of everybody's time, because this was one efficient committee that did a lot of important things for the city. And I just wanted to acknowledge and thank everybody for your participation. Thank you very much. Council Vice President.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, I will just say thanks to the staff as well who support this committee. We are supported very ably, and thank you to you, Councilmember Quincy. I will say my feeling is that actually the budget meeting tomorrow, even though you don't physically chair, that feels like kind of the conclusion. So I'm going to save a little bit more commentary maybe for that meeting. So
we'll look forward to that comment, I hope. Good. All right. Well, thank you. We're adjourned.